Terrific. Thanks, both Jason and Andres. What I'm going to do is ask some relatively quick questions here, and our guests will stay seated in response. And then about 10 after, I'll just walk out in the audience and ask questions that I failed to cover. My first one, we really heard two things. There's increasing demand, there's a lack of supply. So let's start with the demand side and then we'll move to the supply side. So you talked about in both your presentations that demand is increasing because the economy is relatively stronger in the GTA than the rest of Canada. We have new immigration coming into our area. Mortgage rates are low. And Jason, you talked about how Barrie's benefiting from a younger demographic and a lot of inter-regional moves as well coming here for more affordable homes and closer to the core of Toronto. So 2016 was an extraordinary year. A lot of increase in prices, supply coming down of listings. When you look at 2017 for our audience, do you anticipate any significant changes in those demand drivers, or will 17 look a lot like 16?
Well, I think, thank you, Tim. I think certainly, when Andreas talked about some of the demand factors as well, I mean, it's certainly possible that, let's talk about sort of what can happen in the GTA first, because I think it impacts Barrie. It is certainly, some of the new mortgage lending guidelines that we saw come into place may prompt some households to do one of two things. They could move to the sidelines and just say, I'm not going to purchase any form of ownership housing. I'm going to wait and see my income increase. I'm going to wait and save up more of a down payment. Or they'll shift the type or geography of home or location of home that they're looking to purchase. And I think when you think of Barrie, when you think of other surrounding centres like Kitchener and Guelph and Hamilton, I think it is possible to see some of that shift as well. But let's say even in Barrie, if new lending guidelines plus the prospects of slightly higher mortgage rates on average this year compared to 2016, let's say that we did see some buyers move to the sidelines just in general, and we saw, say, sales dip down below 6,000. We saw lower sales in 2017 than we did in 2016. We're still talking about probably the tightest market conditions that we've seen in Barrie for more than 20 years. Even if you see a decline in sales as a result of mortgage lending guidelines, as a result of higher mortgage rates. And so I think, again, that's very telling. That you can bring on new policies and act new policies that are meant to, say, soften the demand or shift the demand into different types of housing, yet you're still looking down the barrel of likely double-digit price growth. I mean, again, I think that just underlines the point that, if we're looking at policies for the housing market over the next couple of years, we've got to start looking a lot more closely at, what's impacting the low level of inventory, what's impacting the inability to bring, low-rise home types online from a new construction perspective in greater numbers.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. Andres.
Just to bring up two things that Jason touched on. It's good that you put out data on foreign purchases in Toronto. That's one of the things which Moody's Analytics don't have data for foreign purchase or foreign housing demand in general. But that's a potentially destabilizing element in housing market, as it brings in at least the potential for wealth inflows to come into the metro area and drive up house prices beyond long-term income fundamentals. And it doesn't affect just downtown Toronto or Vancouver. It has a ripple effect where people priced out of some of the Toronto neighborhoods move further out, and eventually, if foreign influence becomes strong enough, it could have an effect on all of the outlying metro areas in the Golden Horseshoe as well. So that's definitely a factor in total demand that's definitely worth mentioning. With regards to mortgage rates, I would say you can be optimistic on mortgage rates for this year, the next year, 2019. That I'm not so sure about. Please keep in mind that from the point of view of the Fed or the Bank of Canada, what we have is tightening labor markets. In Canada, the labor market has fallen below 7% unemployment, which is still not an absolute low, but it's getting close to a cyclical low for unemployment Canada. In the United States, it's at 5%. And of course, in the United States, you're likely to get a significantly more hawkish Federal Reserve over the next 2 to 3 years, pushing up on interest rates. So sooner or later, probably a little later, if you consider 2019, 2020, a little later, you're going to have an upward trend in longer-term mortgage rates, and that will start bringing up mortgage rates as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask you momentarily about the foreign ownership issue Andres, you brought up, and I know Jason spoke about in his remarks about the impact that Trev has seen or not seen in BC. I just want to do a quick follow-up question on the federal side there. So, Jason, you wrote a Huffington Post recently that when the federal government brought in the new stress-tested mortgage rules, that the change in sales is kind of the same for November, December as a regular year. So, first part of the question, did that have any impact? And secondly, do you think there is a risk in 2017 or 18 of more federal action to try to weaken demand?
I think there certainly is the risk that the federal government will look further at the demand side of the equation, right? You know, we've seen multiple rounds, if you will, of changes to federal mortgage lending guidelines, both going into the recession and then, you know, as we moved out of it, almost on an annual basis, right? Since coming out of the recession, where they're talking about mortgage lending guidelines or down payment or price ceilings in terms of qualification for high ratio mortgage insurance, and it hasn't had a huge impact on the market. Perhaps sort of a short-term whipsaw if you think back in 2012, where people kind of dropped off for a bit and then sort of moved back into the market. And I think some of our consumer survey work that we've had Ipsos do for us over the last couple of years goes a long way to explain it. I don't think the average Canadian and say household in the Greater Golden Horseshoe is given enough credit in terms of their household finances, because, you know, a lot of times when we're talking about, you know, the number of people putting very low down payments, and we need to bring in more or stricter policies around mortgage lending and mortgage insurance, what we find is that whether you're talking about first-time buyers or whether you're talking about existing home buyers who are looking to move up or down in the marketplace, their down payments on average are substantially above that 20% threshold. 27, 28% is the norm that we've seen over the last couple of years based on, you know, our consumer survey work. And so I think there is a lot of flexibility there on the part of the average home buying household in the Greater Golden Horseshoe to account for changes to mortgage lending guidelines. And I think that's why we've seen not a lot of change in market conditions and demand, you know, over the last, say, half a decade, as we've seen, you know, stricter and stricter mortgage lending guidelines come into place, because I think, you know, households in general in Canada historically have been conservative, and I think they continue to be so when they're, you know, when they're looking at purchasing a home.
Others?
That just about covers it. With regards to downside policy risks, I would mention that there is a danger that 2 or 3 years down the line, of course, after the effect of the new mortgage lending guidelines have become pretty much established, that you'll still see strong house price growth in Toronto especially, but also the outlying metro areas. And then you have to see, okay, people are being priced out of their homes in Toronto and having to flee further out. Maybe the Ontario government will decide we have to come up with our own measures to stop this in another way. Maybe I doubt that they'll come up with anything as crass and blunt as a transfer tax, Vancouver style, but they may come up with their own tighter mortgage lending guidelines. This is a remote downside risk, but it's still worth keeping in mind if we have very strong house price growth. If we continue to have tight housing markets in terms of restricted supply, that I'm a little more optimistic on. And of course, there's the farther on downside risk 4 or 5 years down the line that mortgage rates now are at record lows for Canada. But we have to start thinking about what happens to the housing market in 2020 when mortgage rates start climbing above 4 or 4 or 5%. Could be even sooner, but that's what we're predicting. So it's something that needs to be priced in, rather than just having narrow focus of just 1 or 2 years down the line.
My next question is for Andres. Jason, if you want to address any comments that you make. Andres, there's a stir in the room I saw when you used the term overpriced. You said Toronto was 40 to 50% overpriced, and you thought Barrie was about 20%, overvalued was the term used, overvalued in your comments. So help us understand what you mean by that. Are you saying that people are making irrational decisions, or just housing is a better investment in the long run? What do you mean by overvalued?
Overvalued means that you're getting sources of demand that might not stick around. And I say might, doesn't necessarily mean that they'll go away permanently. So when we say that the housing market in Toronto is 40% or more overvalued, we mean that if we look at just sources of domestic demand, which is or regular domestic demand, which is mainly median family income, mainly supplemented with some wealth measures for the Canada national financial system, and also supplemented with the average for population growth over the past 10 years, then you get what we call a trend price, which is a steady as she goes price, which is not which does not include things such as foreign capital inflows from foreign purchases, and which does not include low quality mortgage lending, and which does not include mortgage lending, which in retrospect the Department of Finance might regard it as too risky. So those are the sources of what I like to think of as potentially impermanent demand, which leads housing markets to become overvalued.
I'm going to ask a question now about provincial risk. We talked about the federal side, and having been around in politics, I think the greatest risk in the marketplace is the government does something stupid. That they intervene, it may be well-intentioned, and they cause significant repercussions that they never thought through. On the federal side, I actually had a chance with my REA cap on as a CEO to talk to Finance Minister Bill Morneau. And I think the challenge federally is you've got a hot market in the GTA, the rest of Canada is pretty cool. And you can't have a policy that's just for the GTA federally. So from a conversation with him, I didn't anticipate anything in the short or medium term on federal tightening, because if they do that, they're going to really screw Edmonton or St. John's or whatever. But there's provincial risk. And in British Columbia, about a year out for election campaign in a hot housing market in Vancouver, and the Premier chose to intervene in the marketplace in a significant way with a foreign tax, as well as new taxes at the municipal level on people that are owning homes but not occupying them. So I asked our two guests what they think of the influence in Ontario of foreign speculation, and if there is call for provincial action, or if that would be a big mistake. I'll start with Jason on this one.
Thanks, Tim. So one of my summary slides that I had during my short talk was looking at the overall share, so what we estimate as based on our members' feedback on their transactions over the last year, and give or take was 5% of deals that were accounted for by foreign buyers. So I think what was the more interesting takeaway from those survey results is when you look at what these foreign buyers were planning on using the homes for, 80%. So 4 percentage points out of those 5 were looking at purchasing a home to live in, purchasing a home for another family member to live in, or purchasing a home to rent out. So let's deal with the live in first. People move to Canada with the full intention of putting down roots, taking on work, starting a business or what have you, but they're not necessarily a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen yet. They want to purchase a home, they want to get started, they have the money to do so, so they purchase a home and they're going to live in it. So those people are sort of the bread and butter when you think about broader population growth in Southern Ontario. On net, it's all based on immigration. It's based on newcomers moving to Canada from other parts of the world and putting down permanent roots. Same sort of story, another family member to live in. You're still seeing people sort of living, paying taxes, contributing to the local economy and what have you. On the rental side, we talk a lot about ownership housing. We're seeing some of the tightest rental market conditions, at least in the Greater Toronto area that we live. Right, we're seeing 7-8% year-over-year growth for one-bedroom or two-bedroom condominium apartments in the Greater Toronto, and certainly the supply in the secondary rental market in the investor-held units in condominium apartments is an important factor when you're talking about new rental supply down the road. And so, if you're seeing foreigners looking to purchase because they want to make a return on an investment and they're looking to rent that unit out, again, I suggest you have to be careful when you're talking about the supply of rental accommodation in the marketplace, what your policy direction does, and there could be unintended consequences as a result. And so the bottom line is that when you look at sort of foreign buying at either the low level that it is, and then sort of strip out the fact that the majority of people are purchasing a home to live in or to rent it out to tenants, there's not really an issue from the foreign buying perspective. And to be honest, I would say that if you move back, say, 10 years from now, you're still seeing that type of foreign buying activity, because the bottom line is that our population growth, the reason why we see our regions continue to grow has been on the back of immigration for the last decade. And I think that's just part and parcel of that broader trend.
Data on foreign purchases is relatively hard to collect, so I'm reasonably impressed with Toronto Real Estate that they're able to get good data on foreign purchases. For the United States, we only have that for some of the largest U.S. metro areas. But just it's very good to distinguish between what might be called in-migration foreign purchases for actual occupation and living in, from types B and C, which are either vacation home purchases or investment home purchases, say for the rental market. Those tend to be more concentrated, but the concentration does result in having significant widespread effects. Types B and C, of course, are more prevalent in big, large metro areas such as Vancouver and Toronto, which either have a very good landscape and vacation potential, or they're close to large financial centers. So that type of spending by foreign purchasers tends to definitely be a destabilizing factor in housing markets, and as I mentioned, it tends to have a ripple effect on nearby housing markets. We don't get, my guess is that we don't get a huge amount of foreign purchasers in Barrie, but of course you do get a large amount of domestic intra-province migration into Barrie, much of which might have decided that Toronto or Oshawa or possibly even Hamilton have become relatively too expensive and relatively unaffordable.
I'm going to walk in the audience now and take questions. And as I'm doing that, I'm just going to ask you guys, there's an old line in politics. Bill Clinton, when he won the U.S. presidency in 1992, his expression was, "It's the economy, stupid." And when I listen to most of the discussion here, particularly from Jason, his answer is supply, stupid. That supply is the best way to address these issues, and meddling with demand can be tricky. So I'm going to ask both gentlemen, maybe give us two things you think from a public policy point of view should be done on supply. I know Mayor Lehman was in the very advance just last week talking about the new developments coming up for the annexation of Innisfil, and that's going to mean for more supply and hopefully more opportunities to be able to move to Barrie. Give us two ideas each on supply real quick, and then I'm going to go get the first question.
Sure. So I think number one is that when we talk about supply, we talk a lot about places to grow in the Greenbelt, but let's put that aside and just look at the lands that are available to build on throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe. And there is a lot of land that's designated for some form of residential use, whether it's low-rise or high-rise or mid-rise in between. But the issue is that to get a lot of this land online, to have service lots and a house built on it can sometimes take up to a decade. I certainly believe that there could be some streamlining done, whether it's at the provincial level and then down to the local level as well, to more easily either get servicing done or get through the approvals process in a more expeditious manner. I also think that within built-up centers, there's probably the opportunity to look at whether some land use designations are really representing the highest and best use. And this is especially when you're looking at, say, older commercial uses that perhaps don't sort of match what the trends are, today. And could some of those areas be looked at as for more mixed-use development and what have you. And I understand that regardless of the municipality you're talking about across the province, there's always a real sort of push for economic development and looking at sort of commercial and industrial properties sort of within that purview. But I think, as we're really up against a residential supply problem, we can also take the opportunity to take a broader look just at sort of overall land use designation in many of our centers and make sure that, the land is being used in the most efficient manner.
Let me start with the supply of existing homes before moving on to supply of new homes, which Jason covered pretty well. It's not coincidental, by the way, that Jason pointed out that the housing market, both here in Barrie and in Golden Horseshoe, even for Canada in general, is as tight as it's ever been. That's also the case in the United States, by the way. There are two other, I perceive as two macroeconomic reasons for market tightness. The first is general demographics issues in the United States and in many places in Canada, where you have a lot of older households who have already downsized their homes and who are hesitant to do so again unless clearly favors them. In the United States, you have a whole sort of bubble of baby boomers who are entering either pre-retirement or retirement ages, and who have already shifted into smaller living quarters and who don't see much motivation to sell their homes unless they see a very big capital gain coming their way. I imagine there are places in Canada that are similar. The other reason is of course, the labor market. I would add that you need a labor market that's relatively very, very tight in order for the supply of homes to go up. In other words, you have unemployment near rock bottom, which Canada is getting there, and starting to push up on wages. Because the real motivation for people to sell their homes, unless you factor in a very strong capital gain, is, of course, moving to a new job. And that usually doesn't happen until you have significant growth in wages. And that's not quite starting to happen in the Toronto area yet. Real median family incomes have been roughly flat until 2016. They've only recently barely started to rise. So my prescription for increasing the supply of existing homes is get closer to full employment. With regards to new homes, definitely this is a key factor, and I believe it's the only factor that can prevent the outer metro areas in the Greater Toronto region from appreciating significantly. And there you need a significant development in areas outside of the traditional downtowns, outside of the traditional city boundaries, and that's starting to happen in Barrie. I read some of the Barrie newspapers this morning, and surprise, surprise, there are discussions about development and whether or not to have new huge apartment blocks in different cities. My take on that is, if you want to prevent house prices from moving into the unaffordable area, you definitely need some more sprawl. That's something that's unavoidable if you're going to get a housing market that doesn't start to resemble what's down south in Toronto.
Terrific, Andres and Jason. Thanks so much for putting down. We'll take questions in the audience for 15 minutes, and just ask you to state your name. Thank you. Thanks for having me along the road.
Hi, my name is Katie Hill. I think you're underestimating the impact of foreign investment in our market. I typically list homes, and I can promise you that between 1 to 5 offers are always from investors. And since the mortgage rules changed, it actually made everything worse. They're the only ones that can afford to buy them.
I stand corrected, yeah. That's one of the things that we don't measure or forecast is the share of foreign purchases. It's something that's in the back of our minds, but which we don't have data for every Canadian census and area, which is something that's a requirement for us. Good point.
Yeah, let's touch on it as well. And when we've surveyed our members, even on an ad hoc basis, I guess before we undertook the survey, just sort of talk, because that's always important in any sort of research endeavors. You just talk to your membership, and certainly we heard different stories from people that were doing a lot of their business involved foreign buyers to people who almost none of their business involved foreign buyers, or even contact with would-be foreign buyers. So it wasn't surprising that when we undertook the survey that if you break it down, we certainly did find that some respondents have dealt a lot with foreign buyers in some segments of the market, and others have not. But on average, the responses from at least the TREV membership base, and it was a large sample. 3,500 people and 50,000 is a large sample by any means. We're talking about polling, and so I think it's likely very representative of what we're seeing in the market as a whole. But as with any survey, there's going to be people that are doing undertaking a lot of activity, and also people at the other end of the spectrum that are experiencing very little.
Yeah, I think we're underestimating the impact that speculators are having, whether they're foreign or local, on our market. Last month, we had a third of our residential listings on VDAR were rentals out of 98 listings. That is unheard of. So sometimes people will say that, yeah, we're going to have a family member move in so they can qualify with the lower down payment, but in fact, they're really investing. So I think to catch this runaway train so that future generations can afford to have standard families that really want ownership, not for an investment, but for their family, we need to take a look at that. And it's not just foreign buyers, it's local buyers. Toronto people that have homes that are worth 1.5, they got all this extra equity, they're looking to park their money somewhere. So we need to kind of, look at the whole picture of this investor. It's not just foreign investor. It is foreign money that's coming in through local Canadians that may have Asian ties or Middle Eastern ties or whatever. But our local Canadians are speculating because they have growth and equity in their home that they want to park instead of going to a bank, buy a secondary property. So we need to focus on that as well. Because future young couples, they need to be able to afford to get into a house. Right now, it's crazy. What's it going to be like 5 years from now?
I think you're always going to have investment in property markets, and certainly when you're seeing tight market conditions like we are, you will see domestic households look to invest as well. I found it interesting though that you were pointing at the rental market in particular, and I'd argue that if you have someone purchasing a home and then placing it into the rental market and signing a lease with individuals is more on the investment front than say a pure speculation play in the marketplace. And I admit I'm not as in tune with the rental market in Barrie, but when I look at the CMHC information, it suggests that the rental market is relatively tight here as well. And I think if you have people purchasing homes and then turning around and renting them out with very little difficulty, that people are sort of taking advantage of those market conditions. But it also suggests that there is a need for more rental, and they may be filling a need there as well. So there's two sides of the coin in terms of looking at the investment side, but also looking at the ownership versus the rental side of the market.
Yeah, I would add that one person's speculation is just another person's having the market adjust to a changed economic situation. And you're right that the growth of rentals at the expense of home purchases and the tight supply is definitely not a good sign. And again, I would say the nightmare example to avoid is what's been happening in the United States over the last 10 years, where the rate of home ownership has significantly fallen. The rental market is hot right now, and deflated rents in the United States are higher than they've ever been. Getting back to Barrie, that means that you have to increase the supply of homes in order to reduce downward price pressure. The other end of the other demand side is somehow, somewhere, you have to get either domestic immigration into Barrie with enough income or sufficient economic growth within Barrie, or additional people commuting into Toronto to good jobs, such that they can afford to get better income and better demand. Because as long as the ratio of house prices to incomes is heading north, you're going to get a continued growth in the rental market at the expense of home ownership.
All right, I got 3 more questions on my list. I think we can get through the next 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Mark Leader. I'm with REMAX here in Barrie. I've been in the industry for 31 years now. My question is tied to supply and demand, and also with the environmental laws that have seemed to come along in the last 5, 10, 15 years. When I first started in the business, you could see a small farmer putting in 10, 15, 20, 50 home subdivisions on his land and be able to afford to do that. In today's development world, it seems like the big boys are the only ones, people with deep pockets have the ability to put subdivisions in, which of course affects the prices, supply, and also the environmental laws that go along with bringing on new developments. Tying in with the environmental laws, I'd also like to have your opinion on how the provincial government has been running our utilities, i.e. hydro, and how that's going to possibly affect families' incomes and disposable incomes in relation to the housing market and our economy overall. Thank you for coming, gentlemen.
Well, there I can. Hydro is not an issue that I've looked into, so I can't answer that. My take is that in general, Barrie and the local region has not gotten to the point, or at least the region outside of Toronto core has not gotten to the point where you need to seriously start restricting a residential development for either for environmental or just anti-sprawl reasons. I'm not against residential construction in any way, but you're right. I do think it's very possible and possibly very necessary for the Canadian government or the government of Ontario to start encouraging the development of lower-priced new homes in order to prevent development from coming into the domain exclusively of very large developers who will pick and choose projects and who might keep the supply of new homes artificially low. So it's definitely something that is worth looking into with a policy intervention, not a case where I think laissez-faire would be warranted in this case, given that the overall objective is to maintain a good supply and to maintain affordability.
So I think when you look at, it gets back to my earlier comment when Tim asked for a couple things that perhaps the provincial and even local levels of government may look at bringing on more supply, and I certainly agree that over the last decade it's become harder to bring on new developments, whether you're talking about a small would-be developer, farmer-turned developer, or whether you're talking about a larger integrated home builder to sort of purchase that piece of land or to hold on to that piece of land for the time horizon that it takes to go from, say, that farmer's field through to service lots, if you're looking at it sort of a decade in time, that's a huge investment. You're purchasing that land or making interest payments on that land for a long period of time, and it can preclude bringing on new units of housing and certainly slow it down. So I agree that there is definitely room for some policy work on that side of the equation as it relates to hydro or any other sort of service delivery. I mean, obviously if more efficiencies in that are there, and you can and you see more disposable income realized by homeowners or would-be homeowners, that obviously helps on the affordability equation. Similar to Andreas, I'm not an expert on hydro or hydro delivery, but it certainly sounds like that'll be an issue as we move forward towards the next provincial election.
We have the second last question here, and the last question I already got reserved back for.
Hi, it's Sam McIntyre. Just going back to the investor portion, what people had talked about, I don't know if I can add anything, but I'm seeing a lot of investors coming into the market, and I wouldn't say that they're foreign investors. They're probably landed immigrants coming from Toronto or that area that have got extra money that they can put into purchasing and investing in real estate because, it's better than putting it in your mattress. So really, I'm wondering if you pull stats on that for one thing, whether somebody's purchasing for a principal residence or if they're purchasing for an investment portfolio. Also seen a lot of a joint ventures group coming in and doing investment buying for investments too. So maybe the government should look at, I don't know, I mean there's taxing already, they have the taxing strategy for investments when they catch out, but something when they're purchasing in, there's maybe some, I don't know, something to sort of slow it down a bit, or maybe give the principal residence owners a tax break as opposed to, anyway, just my thoughts.
Sure, and I mean that would be another sort of demand side policy. We hear a lot about it, whether we're talking about foreign buyers or just investors in general, or vacant units. And I guess my concern with further policy initiatives on the demand side, without any regard for what is clearly a supply issue emerging in the market with the lowest level of active listings we've seen in a decade and a half in Barrie or the GTA, I don't think that would have the desired effect. I think that certainly it may influence some would-be investors, but I think when you're talking about 1.5 months worth of inventory, when you're talking about the lowest level of active listings that we've seen, I think it's really something that needs more focus from the various levels of government over the next couple of years. I have no doubt that we'll continue to see discussions around policy at the demand, but I just fear that we'll see new policies come online. They won't have the desired effect, and we'll still be talking about double-digit price growth 1 or 2 years down the road because we haven't dealt with the real glaring underlying problem, which is a lack of inventory, whether you're talking about the resale market or the new home market.
Yeah, okay, I'll move on. I think we've hit that topic. Obviously, there's a concern to express by the audience, but I think you guys have answered that question a few times. So I'll move on now to our last question.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Moore, Remax Che. Gentlemen, we have a federal government. Their policy seems to be immigration to spur growth, body-wise. We have a provincial government that wants to prevent sprawl and has some ideas on how to do that. And, I've been looking at this for a while. I've listened to things that you said this morning and been reading quite extensively. I see a lot of short-term kind of blinders on policies and answers. I think there's something that, real estate associations can do to help us out. And that's to really have some in-depth discussions with government about growth and how to spur it in a proper manner, because it really all boils down to what you were talking about this morning, economics 101. And it's supply and it's demand. And if we have an Ontario government that's really crushing supply We need to do something about that. They came to Innisfil a few years ago and said, you're now a growth area, and guess what? We are going to help you redevelop your policy as far as growth goes. And they've really squashed what can be built there, and it's very frustrating. I've been a few times to the projects, and I hear, that's great, go to the ONB. I mean, that's not a solution, that's more of a feeding the problem. So I think that we need to pressure them to allow growth in a more controlled manner, but also in a way that you can actually develop some areas. Saying that we don't want sprawl and we want to preserve farmland is not the answer. They're kind of giving the blinders on it, and they need their eyes open about it.
I'm not on principle against sprawl. In fact, I tend to be mildly, if you have my own personal preferences, I tend to be mildly for preventing sprawl. But I do tend to think that if you're going to take any steps to prevent sprawl, you also need to take steps to make housing in the densest urban areas affordable. And we haven't seen that. We've seen Toronto become very overpriced. Whether we're talking about condo apartments or row houses or single family homes, and so the Toronto city government and Ontario really need to make up their minds that if they want to prevent sprawl in the outlying metro areas, they need to take very strong regulatory steps, maybe over and above what the Department of Finance has done so far, in order to keep down house price growth in the Toronto core. And that's something that very few governments have succeeded in doing. So I would say sprawl is the natural outcome, regardless of what the provincial government might have in mind.
We'll take one last question here, then we'll wrap.
Hi, I'm Teresa from Remax, and I'm on both the Aurelia and Barrie boards. And the last person addressed what I was going to ask. The reason of demand is in such short supply is because it was the Ontario government who brought in a rule 5 or 10 years ago saying that you can't touch any agricultural land. Someone in Ontario said that all of Simcoe County was part of the Golden Horseshoe, and there's no more developments except for the infill in the cities. Aurelia's been ahead of a couple of the other cities. They're actually now trying to actively address that. I can't remember what the bill or plan is called, but it's the Ontario plan. And I think it's all the Simcoe County cities got together and said, this is ridiculous. We're not Toronto. I'm selling a lot of right close to Muskoka, Severn. And you can't develop anything if it's not already in a city. It's similar to what you said. It's not the developer's fault, it's not anybody's. It's simply the government policy that was a mistake. And unless the municipalities get together, it's not going to change.
I wholeheartedly agree. If you're talking about residential real estate markets in Ontario, really the only policy measures that we've seen undertaken that affect our markets here over the last decade have been focused on the demand side of the equation. And so I think that there's more, the need for supply, the need for more inventory, whether you're talking about the new home market or the resale market, I think has come to the fore over the last year. I know from Trev's perspective, I know from Tim's perspective at OREA, I think inroads are starting to be made both at the provincial level and the local level of government, that policymakers there are going to need to do more work on the supply front, rather than focusing simply on demand or sort of pointing the finger at the federal government and asking for changes to mortgage lending guidelines and what have you. Our survey results show that even if we did take action and say pointed at foreign buyers or investors broadly, that you're talking about a fairly small pool of overall demand, and that while you could see as sales pull back as a result of these types of policies, the fact remains is that you're still going to see a ton of demand, pent-up demand up against a very short supply. And I think the statistics both at the end of the year for Trev and Barrie are startling, that you saw 40-50% decline in active listings at the end of December compared to what we saw at the end of December 2015. that's a supply problem, and I think policymakers are starting to take note. But like I said, it's not a short-term fix, and so looking forward, that's why I continue to see strong price growth, and that does have affordability issues, and that's why we need to start looking at supply-based policy measures as soon as we can.
Just a quick concluding comment. All across North America, with Barrie being a microcosm, you're seeing the problem that housing in the largest metro areas and their outlying satellite metro areas is starting to become unaffordable, both because of increased demand, whether it's from domestic demand or from capital inflows from foreigners, and combined with a restricted supply, including a restricted development. Very few places in the United States and Canada have managed to solve that conundrum, but it's something that's a worrying long-term problem. We're not as bad as, say, Vancouver, but it's something that we're trending slowly in that direction unless the supply problem can be fixed.
So I took off my moderator hat, put on my REA hat for just some concluding comments that President Rob's going to conclude. Just thank you, by the way. I thought this was fantastic, and I really appreciate the chance to be part of it. And Andres and Jason, for your expertise, the answers to the questions. Great crowd. Look, I know that, so 80% of our questions were really around fairness. How do we ensure that a Barrie family can actually buy a home, or that our daughter who just graduated from York University, got a good job, how can she get out of the house and get a place of her own? And I get there's always a temptation to point at foreigners or people who are playing unfair or whatever, taking that away. And it's credit to realtors because you all look out for your clients and their kids and their families. I get that. I'm just always very cautious about calling for government intervention for a number of reasons. Number one, there's the old expression, there's nothing as permanent as a temporary government program. Okay. Just look south of here at the City of Toronto, they brought in the land transfer tax, and now it's like the crack cocaine of taxation. Every budget, right? And Jason, they're now addicted to that. So watch what you wish for, because if they bring it in, the market cools down the road, interest rates go up, they're going to keep that, they're going to keep gouging people, so watch out for that. Second, a doctor would never perform surgery without doing an x-ray or doing a scan. So you got to make sure you actually have actual data as opposed to speculation. Quite frankly, somebody's moving here because they want their son to get their MBA or they want their daughter to open a business or whatever. It's usually a good thing about our character in Canada. So I don't know if we want to put up and play that anti-immigrant sentiment when Trev data shows a lot of folks are coming here for work to start a business or to go to school. On the supply side, so this has been a nice thing. I think Rod knows this from his time in politics. Politics can be a bit like pro wrestling. You put on a show for the camera, and they can actually go out and have a coffee or a beer or whatever afterwards. So that's been rewarding for me, having been 21 years public service. By the way, that's a sentence longer than murderers get, by the way. 21 years. But it's been very good. So we've actually had, from Marie's point of view, my new job, a lot of access to Premier Wynne, the finance minister, I'm getting the housing minister shortly, Patrick Brown, the Conservatives, Andrew Horvath, the NDP, very good listening to our ideas. And I do feel we're getting momentum on the supply issue. So hopefully we'll see some progress on that, because I think that's the ultimate solution, not calling for the government to stop people from buying homes, so let's actually build some more homes. And while Vancouver has a mountain and an ocean, we've created our own mountains and oceans with public planning policies. And we used to call it suburbs, or we used to call it growth. And now somebody coined the word sprawl, like it's a terrible thing. And certainly if you're taking up sensitive land, environmentally sensitive land, great. But if a farmer wants to sell off 10, 12 lots and provide middle-class homes, I think that's a good thing. If somebody wants to sever a property so somebody else can live nearby, isn't that actually a good thing? So we brought forward a number of ideas that hope will find residents of the province to increase supply. Like off the top, the regulatory, so to the sprawl thing, the only thing that's, we found something worse than sprawl, that's people can't buy a home for an affordable price in many parts of the province now, as young middle-class families. So the Places to Grow legislation that basically says that the rest of the GTA has to look like Young and Bloor. Let's drop that and let local municipalities like Barrie say, hey, let's design the character of our community to get more choices, not all high-rises, but some family homes as well. And Jason hit on this too. We're really missing the missing middle, and that may be in the GTA, maybe downtown, so stacked townhomes, semi-detached townhouses. Because I really think a lot of empty nesters would like to stay in the area, but they can't find housing supply. So they can move into these areas, they can stay near the grandkids, all that kind of stuff, and then free up those single-family homes, the starter homes, for that next wave of young couples or individuals that want to buy a home. And we really got to see the planning approval process. I'm glad that Mayor Lehman and Councilor inside here, they're kind of the exception to the rule, though. Like, honest to God, to get a subdivision approved, it's almost like a decade to do so. And then you go through the whole permitting process. It can be up to 18 months before you can actually put a spade into the ground. So we can fix that up as well. And I got to think along our major thoroughfares, the 400, the new transit lines, downtown Toronto GO lines. Like, shouldn't we actually be building along those lines? Doesn't that make sense, and leaving empty fields for crows and worms and such to enjoy? Like, if we're going to build the transportation corridors, it doesn't make sense to put all the money into the soil and no houses around it. So let's do that as well and intensify in those areas, like along the young subway line, for example, through Toronto as it goes. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Julie and Rob, I just wanted to add sort of what REA is doing. So the good news is we're getting the time, we're getting the attention. We just hope we get them to do the right thing in the time ahead, so you can actually go about doing what you love doing and handing over the keys to that new family and they can move into their first home. Thanks very much.
Well, Tim, Andreas, and Jason, thank you very, very much for a really, really informative meeting today. It's interesting as us as realtors living and working in this sort of somewhat challenging environment we find ourselves in, to have sort of experts from afar with their perspective on, the bigger picture. And I think it's we're going to take away some really important things to think about. It's good to know the sky is not falling. There are better times coming, and certainly with more development, that will make things hopefully more affordable in the long run. But again, and Tim, it's great for us as realtors to know that we have a chap like you in charge of REA, who is advocating and working on our behalf. And certainly this is one of the really important things for us as realtors, is to become involved at the local government level with the strong backing of an association like REA, and certainly with the kind of information that Andreas and Jason have brought us today. I think it will make us stronger to be able to advocate with an informed decision at the local level. So again, thank you very, very much, gentlemen, and we appreciate you coming out and enjoy the rest of the day. Folks, there will be more sessions forthcoming. There should be handouts on the table, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming sessions.